Hey there, and welcome to Tales by June, where hearts break, heal, and sometimes seek revenge. Let's begin today's story.
Hey, before we begin, let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more. 5 years. That's how long it had been since I walked away from the boy who once held my heart in his careless hands. 5 years since I chose my dreams over the humiliation he let me endure. And now, no one would recognize that girl anymore. I wasn't the timid, quiet Claire who used to lower her eyes in crowded hallways. I was confident, polished, the kind of woman who walked into a room and made people stop mid-sentence. I had built a life I was proud of, a job at one of the top companies in the country, a position I earned with every sleepless night and every sacrifice. But my proudest moment wasn't the corner office or the designer suits. It was the small house I bought for my parents last year. I still remember the tears in my mother's eyes when I handed her the keys. "Claire, you've given us more than we ever dreamed," she whispered. "No, Mom," I told her. "You gave me everything. This is just me returning the favor." Life was good, stable, predictable, until the day it wasn't. It started with a simple company-wide email. "We are pleased to announce our new CEO, starting Monday." No name, just a meeting time and location. I didn't think much of it. CEOs came and went. It wasn't my concern. Monday morning, I walked into the boardroom, coffee in hand, my mind already on the quarterly report I needed to finish. The air buzzed with anticipation. Executives, department heads, assistants all murmuring about the big reveal. Then the door opened, and my world tilted. Ryan. The same sharp jawline, the same piercing eyes, but older now. More calculated. Dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, he scanned the room, and then his gaze locked on me. I froze for a split second. Then I smiled politely, as if he were any other stranger, and turned back to my notes. He cleared his throat, launching into his speech about innovation and driving growth, but I barely heard a word. My heart wasn't racing from love. It was the cold rush of memories I had buried deep. When the meeting ended, I gathered my files, ready to slip away unnoticed. But his voice stopped me. "Claire." I looked up slowly. "Mr. Bennett," I said evenly, my tone professional. A flicker of something, regret maybe, crossed his face. "It's been a while." "Has it?" I tilted my head, a small smile playing at my lips. "I suppose it has." And then I walked out. I didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me shaken, but as I entered my office and closed the door, I let myself take one deep, steadying breath. He was back. In my world. In my company. And if he thought I was still the same girl who once waited for him to defend me, he was about to learn exactly who I had become. If Ryan thought I was going to crumble just because he was my boss now, he was in for a very rude awakening. The first Monday after his arrival was the perfect stage for my quiet revenge. Not the kind with screaming or tears. No, mine would be slow, deliberate, and unshakably polite. The kind that made a man wonder if you were even angry, or if you had simply moved on. The morning started with a department strategy meeting. Ryan sat at the head of the table, crisp navy suit, watch that probably cost more than my first apartment. His voice was steady, authoritative, but when his eyes landed on me, there was the smallest hesitation. He started outlining an ambitious product launch, talking about shortening the development cycle. I let him finish, then leaned forward. "With respect, Mr. Bennett," I began, keeping my tone warm but factual, "that's not feasible with our current supplier timelines. If we push ahead, we risk losing product quality. I can prepare a comparative report if you'd like." His jaw tightened ever so slightly. He was used to people nodding along with his plans, not poking holes in them, especially not in front of 20 executives. "Of course," he replied smoothly. "I'd like to see that report by Friday." I smiled. "You'll have it by Wednesday." A small win. But I saw it, the flicker in his eyes. He knew I wasn't intimidated. Over the next few days, I made a game of it. Whenever he addressed the team, I'd listen quietly, then follow with suggestions or questions that redirected the focus away from him and onto the work. I never raised my voice, never looked flustered, and each time his gaze lingered on me longer, as if trying to figure out my angle. On Wednesday afternoon, we crossed paths in the elevator, just the two of us. "You've changed," he said finally, watching me from the corner of his eye. People tend to, over 5 years, I replied. Some grow stronger. Some just grow older. His lips curved in a faint, almost amused smile. Which one am I? I tilted my head slightly. I suppose that depends on who's asking. The doors opened, and I stepped out without another word. By Thursday, he started making excuses to involve me in meetings that had nothing to do with my department. I value your insight, he said once. But I wasn't naive. This wasn't about insight. It was about proximity, about trying to close a gap I had no intention of closing. But it was also about control. I could see it in the way he sometimes interrupted when I was speaking to another male colleague, the way his gaze followed me across the room. Possessive. Subtle, but there. One evening, as I was packing up, he stopped by my office door. Busy week, he said. We should catch up. Dinner, maybe? I looked up from my laptop. Oh, I don't mix work with whatever that would be. That would be two old friends talking, he said slowly. I gave a polite smile. Then we must not be old friends. His expression shifted for just a second. Wounded pride, maybe, but he recovered quickly. Have a good evening, Claire. When he left, I leaned back in my chair, letting out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. This was a dangerous game. He wasn't used to being denied, and I could feel the tension between us tightening with each encounter. By Friday, the entire office had picked up on something. I caught whispers in the hallway. Some of the newer employees just thought the CEO had a professional interest in me. The older ones, they weren't so sure. And then, during the weekly wrap-up meeting, it happened. Ryan presented his revised launch plan, clearly influenced by my earlier suggestions. He didn't acknowledge me directly, but the subtle glance he threw my way was enough. I didn't smile. I didn't nod. I just sat there, calm and unreadable, because this wasn't the end of my plan. It was only the beginning. It started small, a few casual conversations in the break room, a laugh shared over a sarcastic comment during a boring meeting. Nothing that would draw attention, unless you were watching closely. And Ryan was watching closely. Daniel, a project lead from the marketing department, was new to the company, tall, easygoing, charming in a low-maintenance way. He had this habit of leaning in when he spoke, like every word you said was the most interesting thing he'd heard all day. He was easy to talk to. Too easy. Which made him the perfect pawn in my quiet little game. That Tuesday morning, Daniel stopped by my desk to ask about a client file. I stood, walked with him toward the printers, and we ended up laughing over some ridiculous typo in a proposal draft. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught Ryan leaving his office. His pace slowed when he saw us, his gaze lingering just a fraction too long. Later that afternoon, during a full staff meeting, Daniel sat next to me. When I passed him my notepad to show a doodle I'd made of our COO with cartoonish glasses, he nearly choked, trying not to laugh. Ryan's voice faltered mid-sentence, and when I looked up, his eyes were on us. Cool, unreadable, but locked in. By Wednesday, it escalated. I was reviewing a campaign draft in the open lounge when Daniel came by with 2 coffees. Figured you needed this, he said, setting one down in front of me. I smiled, took a sip, and thanked him. That's when Ryan walked through, clearly heading somewhere else, but he stopped. Everything all right here? He asked, his tone deceptively casual. Perfect, I said brightly. Daniel was just helping me look over this draft. Ryan's eyes flicked to the second coffee. Helpful guy. Daniel just grinned. I try. Ryan didn't say anything more, but his jaw was tight when he walked away. Thursday brought the first real slip. I was in the lobby waiting for a courier when Ryan stepped out of the elevator. He slowed, hands in his pockets, eyes on me. Going somewhere? He asked. Client folder pickup, I replied. His gaze shifted past me, and I turned to see Daniel coming toward us, holding a file. Claire, here's that report you asked for, Daniel said. Thanks, I said, taking it from him. You're a lifesaver. Daniel left, and Ryan's voice dropped. You two seem close. I raised an eyebrow. We work well together. That's not what I meant. I gave a small, amused smile. Oh, is this concern from the CEO or from someone else? His jaw clenched, but he didn't answer. By Friday, I could feel the tension radiating from him. During a presentation, Daniel leaned over to whisper a quick joke in my ear, and I laughed, softly, but enough for Ryan to notice. His grip on his pen tightened, and he barely spoke for the rest of the meeting. After everyone left, I was gathering my papers when Ryan appeared in the doorway. Enjoying your week? He asked. Very much, I said, slipping my laptop into my bag. Daniel's entertaining. I glanced up at him. Is that what you think this is? Entertainment? He stepped closer. I think you're doing this on purpose. I met his gaze without flinching. And if I am, his eyes darkened, then I guess I'll have to remind you of what we used to have. I smiled faintly, brushing past him toward the hall. The thing about the past, Ryan, is it stays there. I didn't wait to see his reaction, but as I walked away, I could feel it, the shift. Ryan Bennett was no longer the untouchable man in control, and for the first time in a very long time, I was the one holding the strings. By the second week of Ryan's return, it became obvious that subtlety wasn't in his vocabulary. He had a new strategy. Proximity. And not the normal bump into you in the hallway kind. This was deliberate, calculated, and just a little shameless. On Monday, he just happened to be in the break room every time I went for coffee. I'd pour myself a cup, and suddenly he'd appear beside me. Morning, Claire, he'd say, reaching past me for the sugar. How's your day going? It's 9 a.m., I replied flatly. It hasn't started yet. Then I guess I'm the highlight so far, he said with a grin. By Tuesday, his antics escalated. I found him in the lobby holding my umbrella. You left this in the conference room, he said. I didn't even bring an umbrella today. He didn't miss a beat. Then I guess it's fate that I bought a spare. Now it's yours. He followed me into the elevator afterward, leaning casually against the wall as if this was all perfectly normal. You really don't have to do this, I told him. Do what? This relentless hovering. He smirked. Hovering is for amateurs. This is strategic positioning. On Wednesday, it turned romantic, at least in his mind. I was at my desk when a delivery guy walked in with a huge arrangement of white lilies and soft pink roses. The card read, "For the one who still takes my breath away." No name, but the handwriting was unmistakable. I marched straight to his office. Stop sending me things, I said. They're just flowers, he replied innocently. They're a distraction. They're a reminder, he corrected, leaning back in his chair. I'm not going anywhere. I should have left, but his gaze had that same intensity I remembered from years ago, the one that made my pulse skip before my brain could catch up. I hated that it still worked, even for a second. By Thursday, he'd moved to coincidental lunch breaks. I'd step out of the building to grab a salad, and he'd appear beside me. Funny running into you here, he said once. This is the only cafe within walking distance of the office. I shot back. Exactly, he said, smiling like that was the punchline. Friday brought the biggest shock. I drove to my parents' house after work, looking forward to a quiet dinner. When I walked into the dining room, there he was, Ryan Bennett, sitting at the table with my mom and dad, halfway through a plate of roast chicken. Claire, Mom said cheerfully. Look who we ran into at the farmer's market. Small world, Ryan added, all charm and smooth smiles. Your mother insisted I stay for dinner. I stood frozen for a second, then pulled out a chair slowly. Of course she did, I muttered. Throughout the meal, he was on his best behavior, asking about my dad's garden, complimenting Mom's cooking, even offering to fix the squeaky gate in the backyard. My parents ate it up. After dessert, I walked him to the door. This is crossing the line, I hissed under my breath. What line? He asked, feigning innocence. The one where you ambush my personal life. He leaned in slightly, a voice low. Claire, I told you, I'm not giving up. Not this time. I wanted to tell him to stop, to walk away. But the truth was, his persistence, it was starting to unsettle me. Not because I wanted him back, but because I wasn't sure how much longer I could pretend his presence didn't affect me. Ryan's persistence hadn't slowed. If anything, it had evolved. By the time the company received invitations to the annual Winter Business Gala, he somehow made sure I'd be there, and by his side. It started with a casual visit to my desk. You're attending the gala, right? He asked. I hadn't decided, I replied, eyes on my screen. Good, he said with a smile. I already put you on my guest list. I looked up, narrowing my eyes. I don't recall agreeing to that. I don't recall asking, he countered, then winked. I told myself I was going for networking, that it had nothing to do with him. That lie almost held until the night of the gala, when I walked into the ballroom wearing a deep emerald gown and saw Ryan freeze mid-conversation. He crossed the room in 3 long strides. You're breathtaking, he said under his breath. Try that line on someone else, I replied. stepping past him toward the buffet. For the first hour, Ryan lingered nearby, introducing me to every major investor like I was his most prized asset. His subtle possessiveness wasn't lost on anyone. Colleagues whispered, eyes darting between us. And then, like the dramatic entrance in a bad romance novel, she appeared. Emily. She looked almost exactly the same as the last time I'd seen her. Designer dress, flawless makeup, a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Two of her old college friends flanked her, scanning the room as if they owned it. The moment her gaze landed on me, her smile shifted into something sharper. She made her way over, the click of her heels loud even over the music. Well, if it isn't Claire, she said sweetly. I almost didn't recognize you without your thrift store sweaters. Her friends laughed. I didn't. Instead, I let my eyes sweep her up and down before smiling politely. Emily, it's so good to see you, I said. I'm surprised you're here. I thought this was a business gala. Her smile faltered just slightly. I was invited, she said. Of course, I nodded. Probably as someone's plus one? A small ripple of laughter came from the group standing nearby. Emily's jaw tightened. I see you've upgraded, she said, glancing at my dress. Oh, this? I looked down. Yes, I bought it with the bonus I got from closing that deal last quarter. You know, from my actual job. The nearby group laughed louder this time. Ryan, who had been standing just behind me, didn't step in. He didn't need to. I was handling it. Emily's eyes narrowed, but she forced a laugh. Well, I suppose everyone gets lucky once in a while. True, I said, tilting my head. Some people are born rich, and others actually work for it. That did it. More people turned to watch, their expressions caught between shock and amusement. Emily's cheeks flushed red under the soft ballroom lights. She muttered something to her friends and walked away quickly, heels clicking a little too sharply this time. I turned to find Ryan watching me with a strange mixture of pride and something deeper. You didn't need me to defend you, he said softly. No, I replied, meeting his gaze. I never did. But as I walked away to greet a client, I felt his eyes follow me across the room. Possessive, determined, almost dangerous in their intensity. Whatever game we were playing, I had a feeling Ryan Bennett wasn't planning to lose. 5 years. Emily's reappearance wasn't just a one-night I walked away from the gala. Who once held my heart in his careless campaign. 5 years since I chose my dreams by Ryan's humiliation he let me endure every other day. And now, once I passed by and caught her leaning over his desk, laughing at something on his phone. I was another time, she came strutting out of his office just as I was heading in crowded flashing me a smug smile like she just won a small battle. At first, the kind of woman I told myself it didn't matter and made people stop. I wasn't Ryan's girlfriend. We were colleagues. I had built a life I was proud of. But the job at one of the top companies in the country, the way she always seemed to intercept him whenever he tried to approach me. It started to sting. But my proudest moment wasn't the corner office or the designer suits. I saw him making a beeline toward my desk during a coffee break. For my parents last year. Emily appeared out of nowhere. I still remember the tears in my mother's eyes when I handed her the keys. Ryan, I need your signature on these documents. You've given us more than we ever dreamed, directly into his path. No, Mom. He tried to sidestep her. You gave me everything. Still on me. This is just me returning the favor. He said. Life was good. But the meeting is in 10 minutes, she insisted, putting a hand on his arm. I turned away before I could hear the rest. Company-wide email. The pattern continued. We are pleased to announce Ryan our new CEO, to catch me starting Monday. Emily would find some excuse to interrupt. Just a meeting time and location. And though I kept telling myself to stay unaffected, a quiet sadness began to settle in. It wasn't my concern. One night, after another long day morning, of avoiding unnecessary drama, coffee I sat in my apartment with my mind already on the quarterly report I needed to finish. The city outside my window was alive with lights. Executives, but I felt department heads, assistants, all murmuring about the big reveal. A knock at the door broke my thoughts. Then the door opened. It was nearly 10 p.m. My stomach tightened. Ryan. When I opened it, there he was, the same piercing eyes, in a dark coat, now, hair slightly damp from the night air. Dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, he scanned the room. And then his back automatically. Ryan, I froze for a split second. He didn't answer right away. Then I smiled politely, as if he were any other stranger, and closing the door behind him. His eyes searched mine, launching into the first time in years, innovation and driving raw there. But I barely heard a word. I can't keep doing this, he said. My heart wasn't racing from love. I can't keep watching you walk away every time I try to get close. Buried deep. I can't stand the way Emily ended. I gathered my files, broke off, ready to slip away unnoticed. I regret every single moment I let you think you weren't important Claire, to me. I looked up slowly. I froze. You think I don't remember? I said evenly, continued, voice my tone low, professional. Every laugh we shared, a flicker of something, every late night study session. It's been a while. The way you used to fall asleep on my shoulder. Has it? I remember all of it, Claire. A small smile. And I remember the day I lost it. I suppose because I didn't fight for you when I should have. And then I walked out. I didn't give him the
My chest
satisfaction
felt
of
tight.
seeing me shaken, but as I entered my
I didn't
office
want to
and
cry,
closed the door,
but his words
I
hit
let
like
myself
waves
take
against
one
walls
deep,
I'd been
steadying
building
breath.
for years.
He was back.
He
In
stepped
my world.
closer, in my company.
I know I hurt you.
And I know
And
I
if
let
he
her
thought I was
humiliate
still the
you,
same girl
and I
who
hate
once
myself
waited for him
it.
to defend me,
But I'm not that man anymore.
he was about
and I
to
can't
learn
stand one more day
exactly
pretending
who
I don't
had
want you
become.
back.
My voice was
If
small.
Ryan thought I was going to
Do you have
crumble
any
just because he
idea
was my boss now,
how much I
he was
missed
in
you?
for a very rude
His
awakening.
hand came up, brushing
The
my
first
cheek.
Monday after his arrival,
Every day,
was
I
the
wished I
perfect
could take
stage
it back.
for my quiet revenge.
Every single day.
Not the kind with screaming or
A tear
tears.
slipped down before I
No,
could
mine
stop
would be
it.
slow,
He caught it
deliberate,
with his thumb,
and unshakably
his expression
polite.
pained.
The
I'm
kind
sorry,
that made a man
he
wonder
whispered.
if you were even
And then,
angry.
without another word,
or
I let
if
him
you had
pull me
simply
into his
moved
arms.
on. The hug
The
was
morning
warm,
started with a
that
department
grounding,
strategy meeting.
like something I'd been aching
Ryan
for
sat at the
without
head of the
admitting it.
table, crisp
We
navy
stood
suit,
like that for a long
watch
time
that
before he
probably
tilted his
cost
head
more
down
than my
and I
first
met him
apartment.
halfway. His
The
voice
kiss
was
wasn't
steady,
rushed. It was
authoritative,
slow,
hesitant at first,
but when his
then
eyes landed on
deepening
me,
as years of bottled
there was the
emotions poured
smallest
out.
hesitation.
When we finally pulled
He started
back, I
outlining
spoke,
an
my
ambitious
voice
product
trembling.
launch,
Talking
You
about
broke me,
shortening
Ryan.
the development
I had to
cycle.
rebuild myself piece
I
by
let him
piece,
finish,
then leaned
I
forward.
hated you for not being there.
With respect,
But I hated myself
Mr.
more
Bennett,
for still wanting
I began,
you. Keeping my tone warm but factual.
He cupped my face.
That's not feasible
forehead
with our
resting
current
against
supplier
mine.
timelines.
Then let
If
me
we
make
push
it right.
ahead, we risk losing
However long
product
it
quality.
takes.
I can prepare a
We
comparative
ended up
report
curled
if you'd
together
like.
on the couch,
The city
his
lights
jaw
flickering
tightened
ever so
outside.
slightly. We talked
He was
for
used
hours
to people nodding
about
along
the
with
years
his
we'd
plans,
missed,
not
about
poking
the
holes
stupid
in
little
them,
things we'd both
especially not in
remembered,
front of 20 executives.
about how different we'd become,
Of course,
and how some
he
things
replied smoothly.
hadn't changed at all.
I'd like to see that report
That
by
night wasn't
Friday.
about forgiveness, not entirely.
I smiled.
You'll have
It
it
was
by
about
Wednesday.
recognition. A small
About
win.
two people finally
But I
saw
saying
it,
the words
the
they
flicker
should
in
have
his
said
eyes.
years ago.
He knew I wasn't
And for
intimidated.
the first time in a long
Over the next
time,
few days,
I felt
I made a game of it.
Maybe.
Whenever he
Just
addressed the team,
maybe.
I'd listen quietly,
We could
then
start
follow
again.
with suggestions or questions that redirected
The weeks
focus
after that
away
night
from
were
him
different.
and onto
Ryan
the
and
work.
I were
Something
I never
again.
raised my voice.
We hadn't labeled
Never
it,
looked
but
flustered.
the way he looked at
And
me,
each
the
time
way his
his
hand
gaze
brushed
lingered
mine
on me
in the
longer,
hallways,
as if
the
trying to
stolen
figure out my
kisses when no
angle.
one was around. On Wednesday
It was
afternoon,
more than friendship.
we crossed paths in the elevator.
The only catch?
Just the two of us.
Emily.
You've
She
seemed to have a
changed,
sixth
he said
sense for
finally,
when
watching
Ryan
me
was
from
near
the
me.
corner of his eye.
More than
People
once,
tend to.
we found
Over
ourselves
5 years,
ducking
I
into
replied.
conference rooms or
Some
behind
grow
office
stronger.
partitions to
Some
avoid her.
just grow older.
One afternoon,
His lips curved in a
I was
faint,
laughing at
almost
something
amused
Ryan
smile.
whispered when we both heard the
Which
sharp
one am I?
click of heels
I
approaching.
tilted
my head slightly. Emily,
I suppose that
Ryan
depends on who's
muttered.
asking.
Without thinking,
The doors opened,
he grabbed
and I
my
stepped
hand
out without another
and
word.
pulled me into the supply
By
closet.
Thursday,
He started
stood
making
there,
excuses
pressed
to
close,
involve
trying
me
not
in
to
meetings
laugh.
that had nothing to do with
This
my
is
department.
ridiculous.
I whispered. I value your insight.
You love it,
he said
he smirked.
once. But I wasn't
Absolutely
naive.
not.
This
I
wasn't
lied.
about insight.
Some
It was about
days,
proximity.
he'd take me out for lunch
about
under
trying
the guise
to close
of
a gap
client
I had no
meetings.
intention of closing.
And once,
he spent the
but it
night
was
at my
also about
apartment after
control.
we lost track of time talking.
I could see it in the way he
Those
sometimes
nights felt
interrupted
warm,
when I was speaking
easy,
to another male
like we'd
colleague.
gone back to before
The
everything
way his
fell
gaze
apart.
followed me across
Only
the
now,
room.
with the maturity
Possessive.
of people who'd learned
Subtle,
the hard way
but
what
there.
losing each other felt like. One evening,
One
as I was
Friday
packing
evening,
up,
Ryan
he
appeared
stopped
at my
by my
desk.
office door. I need you to
Busy
do
week,
something
he
for
said.
me. We should
He
catch
said,
up.
leaning
Dinner,
in.
maybe? I raised
I
an
looked
eyebrow.
up from my laptop.
That sounds
Oh,
suspicious.
I don't mix work with
Whatever
my
that
mom's
would be.
birthday party this Saturday.
That would be.
I want you
Two
to be
old
my
friends
date.
talking.
He
The
said
words hit me
slowly.
like a spark.
I gave a polite
His
smile.
parents knew about me from
Then
years
we must
ago,
not
but
be
meeting
old
them
friends.
now as his date felt
His
big.
expression shifted for just a second.
Okay.
Wounded
Okay.
pride, maybe, I said.
But he recovered quickly.
Heart fluttering.
Have a good
I
evening,
spent
Claire.
Saturday afternoon picking
When
the
he
perfect
left,
dress.
I leaned back in my
Classic
chair,
black, simple
letting out a
jewelry.
breath. I
Ryan's
didn't
eyes
realize
widened
I was
when I
holding.
stepped out of the car.
This
You're
was
gonna
a
ruin me,
dangerous
Claire.
game. He murmured before
He wasn't
offering his
used
arm.
to being denied.
And
The
I could
party
feel
was
the
in the
tension
Bennett's
between us
sprawling
tightening
estate.
with each encounter.
The kind of place where
By
chandeliers
Friday,
seemed to multiply
the entire
and
office
champagne
had
never
picked up
ran
on
out.
something. I caught whispers
At
in the
first,
hallway.
it was smooth.
Some of the newer employees
Ryan
just
introduced
thought
me to
the
relatives,
CEO
and
had
though
a
some
professional
raised
interest
polite
in me.
brows,
The
they were
older
civil.
ones, they
Then
weren't
his
so
mother
sure.
tapped a glass, calling
And
for
then,
attention.
during the weekly wrap-up
Everyone,
meeting,
it happened.
thank you for coming to celebrate my
Ryan
birthday.
presented his
She
revised
began
launch
with
plan,
a gracious
clearly
smile.
influenced
We
by my
also have
earlier
another joyous
suggestions.
announcement tonight.
He didn't acknowledge
The
me
air
directly,
shifted,
but the subtle
Ryan's
glance he
hand
threw my
tensed
way
in
was
mine.
enough. We are thrilled
I
to
didn't
share
smile.
the engagement of our
I
son
didn't
Ryan
nod.
to Emily
I
Carter.
just sat there, calm
The room
and
erupted in
unreadable.
applause. Because this
Emily
wasn't the
appeared
end of
from
my
the
crowd
crowd
like a queen in her
It
court,
was only
wearing
the
a white
beginning.
gown and a grin that
It started
screamed
small.
victory. A few casual
Ryan's friends
conversations
clapped
in
him
the
on the
break room,
back,
a laugh
cheering.
shared over a sarcastic
My heart
comment
dropped,
during a
my
boring
throat
meeting.
tightening.
Nothing that
forced
would
a
draw
smile,
attention,
blinking
unless
back
you were
tears
watching
and
closely.
stepped slightly away, trying
And
to
Ryan
hide the
was
storm
watching
in my
closely.
chest.
Daniel,
Ryan, dear?
a project lead from
His
the
mother
marketing
said
department,
sweetly,
was new to the
producing a
company.
velvet box,
Tall,
why don't you put the ring
easygoing,
on her?
charming in a low-maintenance
Emily
way.
stepped forward, hands outstretched.
He had
The
this
crowd
habit of
leaned in.
leaning in when he
Ryan
spoke.
stared at the
Like
box,
every word
then
he
at
said
Emily.
was the most interesting
Then,
thing
without
he'd
a
heard all
word,
day.
he turned on his
He was
heel,
easy to
straight
talk to.
toward me.
Too easy.
Gasps rippled
Which
through
made
the
him
room.
the perfect
He
pawn
took
in
my
my
hand,
quiet little game.
opened the box, and slid
That
the diamond
Tuesday
onto my
morning,
finger.
Daniel stopped by my
This,
desk to
he
ask
said
about a
loudly
client
enough for
file.
everyone to hear.
I stood,
Is the only woman I'm
walked with
ever
him
putting a
toward the
ring on.
printers, and we ended up laughing
room
over some
froze.
ridiculous
Emily's
typo
face
in a
twisted,
proposal
her
draft.
confident facade cracking.
Out of the corner
Ryan,
of my eye,
his mother
I
began.
caught Ryan leaving his
No,
office.
he cut in sharply.
His pace slowed
I've
when he
made
saw
mistakes
us.
before,
His gaze
but I won't
lingering
make this
just
one.
a fraction
Claire
too
is the
long.
woman I love.
If that
Later
means
that
disappointing
afternoon,
you,
during
then
a
so
full
be it.
staff meeting,
His
Daniel
father
sat
stepped
next
forward,
to me,
voice hard.
When I passed
Ryan,
him my notepad
this is
to
not
show
a
a doodle
request.
I'd made of our
You will
COO
marry
with
Emily,
cartoonish
or
glasses,
you will no longer
he
be
nearly
part of his
choked,
family.
trying not to laugh.
Ryan's jaw tightened, but
Ryan's
he didn't
voice
flinch.
faltered mid-sentence.
Then I guess you'll
And
have
when
to
I
get
looked
used to the
up,
idea of me
his
standing
eyes
on
were
my
on
own.
us.
Because
Cool,
I'm not giving her up,
unreadable,
but locked
not
in.
this time.
By Wednesday,
Emily's
escalated.
eyes glistened, whether
I
from
was
fury
reviewing a
or
campaign
humiliation,
draft
I
in the
couldn't
open
tell.
lounge when Daniel
She
came
spun
by
on her
with two
heel and
coffees.
stormed out.
Her
Figured
parents
you needed
following
this,
in
he
outrage,
said.
setting one down in front of
Ryan's
me.
mother's lips
I
thinned.
smiled, took a sip,
You'll regret
and thanked
this.
him. That's when Ryan
I regret
walked
every
through,
day I let her
clearly
go.
heading somewhere
Ryan
else,
said, still
but he
holding my
stopped.
hand.
I'm not
Everything
doing it
all
again.
right here?
He asked, his tone
The
deceptively
rest of
casual.
the evening was tense,
Perfect,
with whispers
I said
trailing us
brightly.
wherever we went.
Daniel
But when
was
we
just
stepped
helping me
outside
look
into
over
the
this
cool
draft.
night air, he turned to me,
Ryan's eyes
cupping
flicked
my
to the
face.
second coffee.
I meant
Helpful
every
guy,
word, he said
Daniel
softly.
just grinned.
Tears
I
finally
try.
slipped down my cheeks,
Ryan
but I
didn't
smiled.
say anything more.
You
but
have
his
no
jaw was
idea how
tight
much
when
that
he
meant
walked
to me.
away.
He
Thursday
kissed
brought
me
the
under the
first
Bennett
real slip.
grand stone archway.
I was in the lobby waiting
party
for a
noise
courier
fading
when
behind
Ryan
us.
stepped out of the elevator.
Whatever war we
He
just
slowed,
started,
hands in his
we were
pockets,
in it
eyes
together.
on me. Going somewhere?
Ryan didn't
He
leave my
asked.
side after the party.
Client folder pickup.
When we got
I
back to my
replied.
apartment, he
His
stayed,
gaze shifted
not for
past me,
romance,
and I
not
turned
for
to see
some grand
Daniel coming
gesture,
toward us,
but
holding
simply
a
to be
file.
there.
Claire,
I could
here's
see
that
the
report
exhaustion
you
in
asked
his
for,
eyes,
Daniel
but also
said.
something steely
Thanks,
beneath it.
I said, taking
The
it
next
from him.
morning, over coffee,
You're a lifesaver.
I asked.
Daniel
Do
left,
you think
and
they'll
Ryan's
really go
voice
through
dropped.
with it? Cut
You
you
two
off?
seem close.
He didn't hesitate.
I
They're
raised
already
an
making
eyebrow.
calls.
We work well together.
I stared down into my mug.
That's not what I meant.
Ryan,
I gave a small,
they'll make this
amused
ugly.
smile.
They'll say
Oh,
things
is
about
this
me,
concern from the
about
CEO
my family,
or from someone else?
They can
His
say
jaw
whatever they
clenched,
want,
but he didn't
he
answer.
replied calmly.
By Friday, I
reaching
could feel
across
the
the
tension
table to take
radiating
my
from
hand.
him. During
I'm
the
not letting them
presentation,
win.
Daniel
And you're
leaned
not
over
fighting
to
this
whisper a
alone.
quick joke in my ear.
I wanted to believe
and I
him.
laughed,
But that
softly,
night,
but enough for
my
Ryan
phone
to
buzzed
notice.
with anonymous
His
texts.
grip on his
Photos
pen
of Emily
tightened,
smiling
and he
at
barely
charity
spoke
events
for the rest of the meeting.
Captions like, "This is who
After
should be
everyone
with Ryan."
left, I was gathering my papers
On social
when Ryan
media,
appeared in the
whispers
doorway.
about being a gold digger
Enjoying
began
your
to
week?
circulate.
He asked. Ryan
Very
remained
much, I said,
infuriatingly
slipping
calm
my laptop
through it all.
into my bag.
Don't waste your
entertaining.
energy on noise, he said
I
one
glanced
evening,
up at him.
pulling me into the couch
Is that what
beside
you think
him.
this is?
They want to rattle
Entertainment?
you. We're going to rattle them instead. He stepped closer. He made a
I
single
think you're
phone
doing
call
this on
that night.
purpose.
I met
Alex,
his gaze without flinching. He said when the line
and if I
picked up,
am,
I need
his
you to
eyes
dig into
darkened.
something for me. Then
Emily
I guess
Carter.
I'll have to remind
Her
you
parents.
of what we used to
Everything.
have. Financial, business,
I smiled faintly,
personal, brushing past
I want
him
it
toward
clean.
the hall. I want it fast. The thing about the past, Ryan, is I raised my
It
brows.
stays there.
A detective?
I didn't wait to see his
He gave me a
reaction.
small smirk. But as I walked
Sometimes
away,
you
I
have
could
to
feel
play
it,
the game to
the
win it.
shift. Ryan Bennett
week
was
that
no
followed
longer
was
the
brutal.
untouchable man in
Emily
control.
started showing up at the
and for
office
the first
again.
time in a very
Leaning
long
into
time,
Ryan's doorway
I
with
was
the
the one
false
holding the
sweetness
strings.
dripping from her words.
By the second
She'd
week of Ryan's
accidentally
return,
bump
it
into me
became
in the
obvious
lobby,
that subtlety
smiling
wasn't
just
in his
wide enough
vocabulary.
for the cameras to
He had a
catch.
new strategy. Her parents joined in.
Proximity.
Scheduling
And
lunch
not the
meetings
normal
with
bump
Ryan's
into you in
mom
the hallway
public
kind.
places where they knew the
was
society pages
deliberate,
would notice.
calculated,
and just a little shameless.
I tried to avoid the drama.
On
But
Monday,
at night,
he lying in
just
bed
happened
beside
to be in
Ryan
the break room
I
every
admitted,
time
I went for coffee.
I feel like
I'd
they're
pour
tightening
myself
a
a
noose
cup,
around
and
us.
suddenly he'd appear beside me.
He brushed my hair back
Morning,
from my
Claire,
face.
he'd say,
Let
reaching
them.
past me for the sugar.
The tighter they pull,
How's your day going?
the harder it'll snap when I'm done.
It's 9 a.m., I replied flatly.
3 days later,
it hasn't
Alex
started
delivered.
yet. Ryan invited me into
Then I
his
guess I'm the
office,
highlight so
locking
far,
the door
he
before
said with a
pressing
grin.
play on a series of
By
recordings.
Tuesday, his antics escalated.
My jaw dropped as
I found him
Emily's
in the
voice
lobby
filled
holding
the
my
room.
umbrella.
You left this in the
Once I'm
conference
married
room,
to Ryan,
he said.
his company's as good as
I
ours.
didn't even bring an umbrella
She
today.
sneered.
Her
He
father's
didn't
voice
miss a beat.
followed, dripping with
Then I
arrogance.
guess it's fate that I bought a
We'll
spare.
replace his
Now it's
executives with
yours.
our people within 6 months.
He followed me into the elevator elevator
Then,
afterward,
the
leaning
blow that made my
casually
stomach
against the wall
twist.
as if this was all perfectly
Emily
normal.
laughing. His mother's
You really
an
don't have to
insufferable
do this,
snob.
I told him.
I can't wait to
Do
see
what?
her humiliated when I'm in charge.
This relentless hovering.
I looked at Ryan,
He
wide-eyed.
smirked.
You have
Hovering
to show
is for
this to your
amateurs.
parents. This is
He shook his
strategic
head.
positioning.
I'm
On
gonna do one
Wednesday,
better.
it turned romantic, at least in
That
his mind.
night,
The recordings leaked.
I was at my desk
Not
when a
to the
delivery
Bennett's
guy walked
privately,
in with a huge
but to the
arrangement of
business
white
media,
lilies
the
and
society
soft pink
blogs,
roses.
even the local
The card
evening
read,
news. By
"For the
morning,
one who still
headlines
takes
blared,
my breath away.
engagement scandal, Carter
No
family
name,
plot to
but
take
the handwriting
over
was
Bennett Enterprises
unmistakable.
exposed. I marched straight
Clips
to
of
his
Emily's
office,
voice
calling Ryan's
Stop
mother
sending
names
me
played
things,
on
I said.
repeat. They're
Social
just flowers,
media flipped
he
overnight.
replied innocently. The same
They're a
people who
distraction.
whispered that I didn't belong were
They're a
now shredding
reminder,
Emily in
he
comment
corrected,
sections.
leaning
back in his chair. Ryan leaned
not
back
going
in his
anywhere.
chair, watching the coverage with a
I should
faint
have left,
smile. But his gaze
Told
had
you
that
I'd make it
same
right.
intensity I remembered from
I stared
years
at
ago.
him, equal parts
The
shocked
one that
and
made
impressed.
my pulse skip before my brain
You just
could catch
declared
up.
war.
I hated that
Claire,
it still worked, he said softly,
even
his
for a
eyes
second.
locking on mine.
By Thursday,
The war
he'd
was
moved
already
to
here.
coincidental
I just
lunch
made
breaks.
sure we're the
I'd
ones
step
holding
out of the
sword.
building to grab a salad, and he'd appear
It was
beside
a quiet
me.
Saturday evening.
Funny running into
Ryan
you
and I
here,
were
he
having
said
dinner at my
once.
parents' house.
This is the only
Something
cafe
we'd started
within
doing
walking
every
distance
couple of
of the
weeks.
office.
My mom
I
had
shot
made her
back.
famous roast chicken, and the
Exactly,
smell filled the whole
he said,
place.
smiling like that was
My
the
dad was in the
punchline.
middle of telling Ryan a long-winded
Friday
fishing
brought
story,
the biggest
kind
shock.
that had more arm
I drove
gestures
to my
than
parents'
actual
house
fish.
after work, then
looking forward
the
to a
doorbell
quiet
rang.
dinner. Mom
When I
frowned.
walked into the dining
We're not
room,
expecting anyone.
there he was.
I'll get
Ryan
it,
Bennett,
I said,
sitting
wiping
at the
my hands
table
on
with
my
my mom
napkin
and
as I
dad.
stood.
Halfway
The
through
moment
a
I
plate
opened
of
the door, I
chicken.
froze.
Claire,
Ryan's parents,
Mom said cheerfully,
standing on the porch.
Look who we
dressed
ran into at the farmer's
nicely,
market.
smiling.
Small world,
I
Ryan
blinked.
added, all charm
Hi.
and smooth smiles.
His mom gave a little wave.
Your mother
We
insisted
heard there's
I stay
roast
for
chicken.
dinner.
Thought we'd invite ourselves. I stood frozen
His
for a
dad
second,
added with a
then
chuckle,
pulled out a chair
"Do
slowly.
you have room for 2 more chairs?"
Of course she did, I muttered.
From the dining room,
my
throughout
dad
the
called.
meal, he was on
We'll
his
make
best
room
behavior,
for 4 if you bring
asking
dessert.
about my dad's garden, complimenting Mom's cooking.
Everyone laughed, even offering to
Except
fix the
me,
squeaky gate in the
because
backyard.
my brain was still processing
My
the
parents
fact
ate
that
it
the
up.
people who had
After
once
dessert,
demanded
I
Ryan
walked into
marry
the door.
Emily
We're
This
now
is standing
standing
on my
line,
parents'
I hissed
doorstep
under
like
my
it was
breath.
the most natural thing
What
in the
line?
world.
He asked, feigning
We
innocence.
squeezed them in, borrowing
The
an
one
old
where you
wobbly
ambushed
chair
my
from the
personal
study
life.
for Ryan's dad.
He leaned in slightly.
The seating
voice
arrangement
low.
was comically
Claire,
cramped.
I told
Ryan's
you,
mom
I'm not giving
accidentally
up.
elbowed him
Not this
twice while
time.
passing the bread.
I wanted to tell him to stop.
Halfway through dinner,
to walk away.
Ryan's mom
But
set
the
her
truth
fork
was,
down and
his
looked straight at me.
persistence, it was starting
Claire,
to unsettle me.
she began,
Not
voice
because I
softer
wanted
than
that,
I'd ever heard
but
it,
because I wasn't
we were
sure how
wrong.
much longer I could pretend
About
his
a
presence
lot of
didn't
things.
affect me.
Ryan's dad
Ryan's
nodded.
persistence hadn't slowed.
We let pride and
If
social
anything, it
expectations
had evolved.
cloud our judgment.
By the time the
And
company
in doing
received
so, we
invitations
almost
to
lost
the
our
annual
son.
winter business gala,
The table
he
went
somehow made
still.
sure I'd be
My
there.
mom reached
and
over
by
to
his
squeeze
side,
my hand.
It
Ryan's
started
mom's
with a
eyes
casual
glistened.
visit to my desk.
We're here tonight
You're
because
attending
we'd like
the
to
gala,
ask
right?
you
And
he
your
asked,
parents
for your hand in
I hadn't
marriage to our
decided.
son. I replied,
We
eyes
want
on
to
my
make it
screen.
right.
Not just
Good,
for Ryan,
he said
but for
with a
all of
smile.
us.
My
I already
breath
put
caught.
you on my guest list.
My mom's smile was wide
I looked
and
up,
teary,
narrowing my eyes.
My dad cleared his throat.
I don't recall
pretending
agreeing to
not
that.
to be emotional.
I don't recall asking.
Well, he
as long as
countered,
Ryan
then
promises
winked.
to take good care of
I
her,
told
he
myself
said
I was going
gruffly,
for networking.
You have our blessing.
That it had nothing to do with
Ryan
him.
turned to me.
That
his
lie
eyes
almost
searching
held
mine.
until the night of the
Claire,
gala, when I walked
will
into
you?
the ballroom
I laughed
wearing
through
a
the
deep
tears.
emerald gown
Yes,
and saw
1,000
Ryan
times
freeze
yes.
mid-conversation. The room erupted
He
in
crossed
cheers.
the room in
my mom
3 long
hugging Ryan,
strides.
my dad slapping
You're
him on the back so
breathtaking,
hard the
he
wobbly
said
chair
under his
nearly
breath.
tipped. Try that line on someone else.
A new
I
chapter.
replied, stepping past
The
him toward
wedding was a
buffet.
whirlwind.
White
For the
roses,
first hour,
soft
Ryan lingered
music,
nearby,
our closest
introducing
friends and
me
family.
to every major
Ryan
investor
looked at me
like
like
I was
the
his
only
most
person
prized
in the world
asset.
as we exchanged
His subtle
vows.
possessiveness
Married
wasn't lost
life
on
was
anyone.
Beautiful.
Colleagues whispered.
We had silly
eyes
arguments
darting
over
between
who
us.
made the better pasta,
And then,
lazy Sundays
like the
curled up on a
dramatic
couch
entrance
and
in a
romantic
bad romance
getaways
novel,
where the rest of the
she
world
appeared.
faded away. Emily.
Then came the
she
day
looked
I told
almost
him.
exactly the same
I
as
was
the
standing
last
in the
time I'd
kitchen,
seen her,
holding a tiny
designer
white stick
dress,
with 2 pink
flawless
lines,
makeup, a
my
smile
hands were
that didn't
shaking
quite
when I
reach
handed
her
it to him.
eyes. His jaw dropped.
2 of her old college
Claire,
friends flanked
we're having
her,
a baby?
scanning the room as if
I
they
nodded,
owned it.
tears in my eyes.
The moment her gaze landed on me,
He picked me up and
her
spun me
smile
around,
shifted
laughing
into
like
something
a boy.
sharper.
9 months later, we
She
got
made her
twice
way
the
over.
surprise.
The
Twins.
click of her heels
A
loud
boy
even over the
and a
music.
girl. Well,
One
if
sunny
it isn't
afternoon,
Claire,
the Bennett Estate's
she
garden
said
was
sweetly.
alive with laughter.
I almost
The
didn't
twins,
recognize
Ethan and
you
Ella,
without your
toddled across the
thrift
grass,
store
giggling
sweaters.
as both sets of
Her friends
grandparents
laughed.
chased them in a game
I
of
didn't.
tag.
Instead,
Ryan and
I let my
sat on the
eyes sweep
patio,
her up and down
coffee
before
cups in
smiling
hand,
politely,
watching the chaos
Emily,
unfold.
it's so good to see you.
His
I
mom
said.
pretended to be caught
I'm
by
surprised you're
Ethan,
here.
while
I
my
thought this
dad
was a
lifted
business
Ella
gala.
high into the air,
Her
making
smile
her squeal
faltered
with
just
delight.
slightly.
I
Ryan
was invited,
slipped his arm
she
around
said.
my shoulders.
Of course.
I
This-
nodded.
This is
Probably
everything I ever
someone's plus
wanted.
one. I leaned
A
against
small
him,
ripple of laughter
smiling
came
as
from the
Ella
group
ran
standing
to us,
nearby,
clutching a daisy
Emily's
in her
jaw
tiny
tightened.
fist. I see
And to
you
think,
upgraded,
I
she
whispered,
said, glancing
it
at my
all
dress.
started with roast
Oh, this?
chicken.
I looked down.
He laughed.
Yes, I
kissing the
bought
top
it
of
with
my
the
head.
bonus I got from closing
No,
that
Claire?
deal last quarter.
It started with
You know,
you
from my
never
actual
giving up on
job.
yourself.
And thank
The
God you
nearby
didn't,
group laughed louder
because
this
now I
time.
get to spend forever Ryan,
making sure
who
you
had
never
been standing
regret
just
it.
behind me, didn't step in.
As the sun dipped
He didn't
lower,
need to.
painting the
I
sky
was
in
handling
shades
it.
of gold and
Emily's
pink.
eyes narrowed,
We
but she
sat
forced a
surrounded
laugh.
by love,
Well,
laughter,
I
and the
suppose
two
everyone
little
gets
souls
lucky
who had
once
made
in a
our
while.
world complete. True,
And
I
I
said,
knew,
tilting my head.
Our story
Some
had
people are
many
born
chapters
rich,
left to write,
and others actually work for it.
Emily's
That did
reappearance
it.
wasn't just
More
a
people
one-night
turned to
performance
watch
at the gala.
Their
It was the
expressions
start
caught
of
between
her
shock
campaign.
and amusement.
Within a week,
Emily's
she
cheeks
was
flushed
dropping
red
by
under
Ryan's
the soft
office
ballroom
almost
lights.
every other day.
She muttered something to her
Once
friends
I passed
and
by
walked
and
away
caught her
quickly,
leaning over his
heels
desk,
clicking
laughing
a little
at something
too
on his
sharply
phone.
this time.
Another time, she
I
came
turned to
strutting
find
out of his
Ryan
office
watching
just
me
as I
with a
was heading
strange
in,
mixture of pride
flashing
and
me a
something
smug
deeper.
smile like she just won a small battle.
You didn't need me to defend you,
At first,
he said softly.
I told myself it didn't matter.
No,
I
I
replied,
wasn't Ryan's girlfriend.
meeting his gaze.
We were colleagues.
I never did. But as I
But the
walked
way
away
she
to greet a
lingered in his
client,
space,
I felt his eyes
the way she
follow
always
me
seemed
across
to intercept
the room.
him whenever he tried to approach
Possessive,
me.
determined,
It started to sting.
almost dangerous in their intensity.
One
afternoon, I saw
Whatever
him making
game
a
we were
beeline toward
playing,
my
I
desk
had a
during
feeling
a coffee
Ryan
break.
Bennett wasn't planning to
Emily
lose.
appeared out of nowhere.